It's impossible to recreate history. It's impossible to turn back. And I think that's the lie the right sells, right? Is that if we attack the right people, ban the right things, we will turn time backwards. It's not going to happen. The internet has changed how we lived in an entirely new way. It's connected new communities that couldn't talk in the same way previously. They're fighting a war that they don't even understand what they're fighting against. Those of us who are alive right now are going to experience the death throes of the old world for a while longer. Life has changed. Queer people have changed. There is no turning that back.
Hello and welcome to Power Beyond Pride, a weekly queer change-making podcast bringing you voices and ideas from across our fierce and fabulous spectrum to transform our world. I'm Kenyon Farrell, and I am a writer, activist, communications and media strategist in my social justice work life. And each week we sit down with an activist or change maker across the LGBTQIA+ community who are fighting for equality on every level.
And I am Mattie your hostess with the mostest. I am normally, typically, always, I like how I use all those different adjectives at the same time, but I'm always the loudest person in the room. So I love getting the party started, being an actress, comedian, and singer and dancer, and a Jacqueline of all trades. Why not? Let's just have fun. And today's guest is bringing brilliance, history, and a little bit of New York intellectual spice. We're joined by writer, historian, curator, and co-host of Queer History 101, the incredible Hugh Ryan. Hugh, welcome to Power Beyond Pride.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And fun fact, I actually was the missing Spice Girl, New York intellectual spice, but Posh and I just didn't get along. So anyway. That's a story that's not in the book. Let's just say that.
Well, she's always spoken so highly of you, but
water under the bridge now.
Right.
Seriously. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you both. It's a really great opportunity. One of my favorite things about being a writer is that I get to talk to amazing and brilliant people all around the country, and it makes it really special. So thank you.
Thank you. We're very glad to have you. And I've been a fan of your work kind of from afar for a while. And so we're very glad to have you here with Power Beyond Pride. So first things first, just how are you doing? You're in New York City. We're obviously dealing with a fascist takeover of the federal government.
Yeah.
But we also, New York has been the sort of bright spot for lots of us around the country, kind of posters around Johnny Wynn. And so I just want to hear from you. What's the energy like kind of as we're coming up on summer and whatnot? So what's happening in New York right now? What's the vibe? What's the energy?
I'm feeling a lot of people who are very excited for the summer, very excited for pride, very excited for a pride that is not corporate pride, for some pride and resistance, pride and rebellion. I think that people are scared, absolutely. But I am seeing so many people turn out in ways that they have never taken to the streets before. People who have gone to protest, but are now deeply engaged in community organizing, who are doing ice walks and ice trainings and talking to their neighbors in ways they have not before. And also a lot of people who are ready for summer to get out to re-speech, to relax, to have some fun, to breathe a little bit. I mean, I think we are in an awful time and there's no getting around that. And I think that all of us are anxious and frightened, but I am seeing people really both take care of themselves, take care of each other, and that is exciting.
Well, that's beautiful. And I definitely agree. New York is one of those things. I currently live in the South, but I do visit New York quite often. And in the summertime, you just want to be outside. So I like the fact that you're saying that people are enjoying and ready for summertime and the springtime, because with everything politically that is going on and just culturally in our world right now, I think just being outside and getting fresh vitamin D is a wonderful thing. Yes.
I agree. And vitamin D is a great way to put going to the rambles, getting fresh vitamin D. Wherever you go, however you enjoy the outside, it really is healing.
You can get a double dose, perhaps.
I'm going to leave that right there because I could go further with how it can be healing in so many ways. But Hugh, what do you think people get wrong about queer history when they talk about today's struggles?
A couple of big things come to mind. I think that is a great question. One right away is, and this is more for people outside the community, not as much people inside the community, but this idea that kind of Stonewall is the start of queer history in America, that there was nothing before that, or what there wasn't recorded, or was just like pure sadness, or I think that's just not the case. And we're discovering more and more every day how much richness there is in queer history, how much depth there is, how much actually has been saved. So that's one big myth. Another one that I think is a little more complicated that I see a lot is this approach to people in queer history who we love for their activism, for the changes that they made. And then we want to historically almost like stand down their rougher edges,
Mm.
and we don't let them be angry or hurt or experiencing mental health crises. And then because we don't let people in the past do that, it gets so much harder to look at the people making change today and not dismiss them because they're angry or they're not saying it the right way or they don't look the right way. And so for me, that one is, it's almost like we think we're doing something kind. We're sort of like hiding the dirty laundry. But in the end, it's making it harder for us to see the present as well as the past. And I love the past for lots of reasons, but I think for me, the most important reason is how it lets us see the present, how it lets us understand where we are right now and where we are headed. And so that's another one that I think is a big myth. And I think the third one that I would say that I see a lot in television and in movies and in books is this idea that gay identity, it's kind of the reverse of the we didn't exist before 1969. It's gay identity has never changed. And it is exactly what it has always been. And we don't think about it differently. We don't experience it differently. I love me some Julian Fellows and I love Downton Abbey and I love The Gilded Age. But like all it is a white guy today worrying about marriage in an outfit from 1890. And that's just not real. It's just not it. And it's sad because everything else in his shows is all about modernity and change. And the gay people are kind of stuck. So those are, I think, three big myths that come to mind for me.
Well, now, so
Yeah.
since you brought that up, so let me ask this question. Do you think that we are in a situation where we're about to start repeating history or currently repeating history? Or do you think we're going into a new territory and creating history currently?
It's interesting. I think that it's impossible to recreate history. It's impossible to turn back. And I think that's the lie the right sells, right? Is that if we attack the right people, ban the right things, we will turn time backwards. And that's literally not possible. It's like watching Superman 2 and expecting him to push the earth backwards and time to travel back. It's not going to happen. But I do think we can look to the past for echoes of what's happening right now, both in good and bad ways. I I find this, I tend to bring every conversation back to the 19th century at some point. I apologize. I'm going to try to keep it really brief. But when I think about this present moment, I think about in the late 19th century, America urbanizes, right? And how we think about everything changes. And we especially change what it means to be queer. The system of what we think of today as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender really emerges in this moment from an earlier time where everything was seen through gender. So even people like Karl Ulrich, who's often called the first homosexual in history, when he wrote about himself, he said, "I'm a female spirit trapped in a man's body," right? That's not how we think of gay identity, even though when we look at him, he seems like a gay individual because it's something totally different. So 19th century, that model changes. LGBT appears because of urbanization. Gender normative homosexuals, they're able to find each other everywhere around the cities. And then people write about them and then doctors classify them. And we get this sort of modern idea. But it takes the modern idea being spread around the world for it to really come in. And that's a time of like great chaos and change. And you get this simultaneous rise in eugenics movements here in the US, all around the country. The Nazis are, of course, the most famous, but every president of every university in America was on a eugenics board somewhere. And there was all this anti-immigrant sentiment and there was all this anti-urban sentiment. And it was because how we lived had changed. And just like today, they didn't want to go backwards. They didn't want to get rid of cities. They promised they would turn the clock back, but they didn't and they couldn't. And that is happening again right now in America and around the world. The internet has changed how we lived in an entirely new way. It's connected new communities that couldn't talk in the same way previously. Particularly young queer people are able to access ideas about gender and sexuality and to talk to them with each other in new ways that we have never experienced. And we're seeing this huge identification among Gen Z and Gen Alpha people in queer ideas, queer identities, trans identities in particular, non-binary identities. And it's very similar to me to what happened at the end of the 19th century. We change how we live, and queer people change as well. We change along with it. And the people who are against us think that they can turn that around by criminalizing us. By the 1920s, all these laws pop up criminalizing homosexuality in America that did not exist before because they're responding to this change. Of course, we're seeing that now around trans issues, around gay issues, saying gay in schools down in Florida. They're fighting a war that they don't even understand what they're fighting against, and they're aiming at the wrong things. And they have, in some, I think, real significant way already lost. But unfortunately, those of us who are alive right now are going to experience the death throes of the old world for a while longer. So when I think about the echoes of yesteryear, I think life has changed. Queer people have changed. There is no turning that back. But also, it's going to be really awful for a bit more.
Yeah, so thank you for that answer. And I think thinking about yourself as both a writer and a historian who's really interested in queer history, you also are a host of a podcast, Queer History 101, with the gorgeous, I sometimes just drool as I saw Peppermint. She's so God, that woman is gorgeous.
It's amazing.
I don't know how it's in a room with her recording a podcast. But in any case, but y'all work together on a podcast, and if folks know Peppermint as a RuPaul's Drag Race kind of icon as well.
She's the Grand Marshal of New York City Pride this summer.
Oh, word. Okay, right. So shout out, congratulations, Pepper, on that. So one question is just kind of interested in the working dynamic of that podcast, like how y'all kind of like work together. And then also, how do you balance doing a podcast that's about history, which we often don't think of as sort of fun or comedic, and how do you do that in a way that's entertaining and engaging for our audiences today?
Absolutely. It's interesting. Pep and I really get along super well. I think that we think about things really similarly in a lot of ways, even though we approach them differently and we might have different things that we emphasize. The podcast came about because we were running a book club, and we just found that we had the same opinions on these books over and over again. And we really were coming at them from very different places, picking up on different things, but we vibed on what we felt overall about them and where we thought they were interesting. And we did these interviews together, and the podcast kind of grew and grew out of that. The book club sort of spawned a more weekly podcast where we talked about all different things. Particularly in this last year, we've really made a pivot to talking about a lot of the current issues, a lot of what's happening legally, socially in this country, the rise of fascism, the clampdown on trans lives. That's become a big focus for us, and thinking about it both currently and historically, how it mirrors practices that we've seen before, or the books that we're reading that inspire us to resist what's happening right now. We're all across the board. We're about to do Transcendent, Laverne Cox's memoir, which comes out in June, which I'm really excited for. And in terms of the balance and the keeping it fun, that's hard. Like, I think Pep and I are both really fun people, but there are days where the podcast gets pretty angry and pretty spicy because it is not easy or possible or maybe even healthy to keep it light sometimes. So we really try to bring in all of the different energies to acknowledge how we are feeling in any particular day. And when we have a guest, to try to make them as welcome and happy as possible. But if we're in like a terrible mood and like a whole bunch of shit just went down, like right after was it Kansas, the first state that made the trans licenses illegal, when those were invalidated, like that podcast was pretty hot. I'll say that.
I definitely can understand that. I see that. And my sentiments too about Peppermint. She is gorgeous and beautiful, and I love it. Yes.
She is. And she's so talented. I mean, working with her has honestly been a dream. And I will say this, back in, let's just say, the 20th century, I remember seeing Peppermint performing in clubs that I was going out to and thinking she was a star back then. So to fast forward years to be working with her is so exciting.
That's always a beautiful thing when everything comes full circle. Now, you did talk about the book club, which started your podcast. So I want to pivot to the book club for a second, because I think, aren't you currently reading the Harriet Tubman Live in Concert? Is that the current book?
We just finished Eli Elrich's Before Gender, which was a fascinating and incredible look at trans history and gender history. And we're about to do my memoir, My Bad, A Personal History of the Queer 90s and Beyond, which comes out at the end of this month on May 26th. So yeah, we do all kinds of books, and I just love it. I love getting to share queer books. I love getting to talk to queer authors. It's a real gift.
So I was going to ask you, because I'm an avid reader myself. So what do y'all, what are your, I guess, your looks, or what do you go for when you're picking out a book for the book club?
We really like to switch it up. So if we've done a memoir last month, maybe we're going to do a more research piece of nonfiction this month, and then we're going to do a novel that's historically set next. It's all really trying to show people, when we started, it was all pretty dense nonfiction. And we were like, that's not all that there is to queer history. There are so many ways in. And so we want the book club to provide all different modes. And maybe because you read a novel that you really loved last month, you're going to trust us when we tell you that this nonfiction book, this history that you wouldn't normally pick up, is also really great.
Okay. Well, that sounds fun. I got to join your book club. I have to get all the information.
Please do.
Yes. And so before we abandon our own podcast and join your book club, we will take a short break and we'll be right back with Hugh Ryan.
Your mission is vital. Let a great idea help you magnify its impact. As a queer-owned graphic design and digital development agency serving nonprofits, healthcare, and education nationwide since 2015, we're dedicated to growing, empowering, and activating your advocates. Our award-winning work speaks for itself. We deliver transformative change. Ready to see your impact grow? Book a session and let's get started at agreatidea.com. That's agreatidea.com. Tired of the same old advocacy advice? Get ready for a fresh perspective with The Idealist, the monthly newsletter from A Great Idea. We're the queer-owned agency that's been sparking change since 2015. Each month, The Idealist delivers a unique and inspiring approach to advocacy building straight from innovators across the country. Fuel your passion and discover new ways to grow, empower, and activate your community. Subscribe to The Idealist. It's your monthly dose of inspiration. Sign up for free at agreatidea.com/idealist. That's agreatidea.com/idealist.
And welcome back to Power Beyond Pride, a queer change-making podcast. I am one of your hosts, Mattie Bynum, sitting here looking all sexy and dapper. Well, I'm not really dapper. I would say that's the two men that I'm sitting with today. Mr. Kenyon and Hugh are very dapper individuals. And if you are just now joining in, you have missed a lot in the first segment, but come on and join us. We are about to start talking about museums and history and art in New York. So, Hugh, you founded the Pop-Up Museum of Queer History. What inspired that?
It's actually an interesting story. About, 16 years ago now, the Smithsonian Museum had their first ever explicitly queer show on a queer topic. It was called Hide Seek: Difference and Desire in American Portraiture. It was a beautiful show. And a couple months after it opened, this right-wing Christian website published a hit piece against the show, claiming it was a sacrilegious Christmas show. Very strange. And they particularly went after a video work by David Warnerovich, an artist that I absolutely love, a real inspiration for me. And all of these people protested, and it was kind of an incredible story because the museum had taken the piece down 24 hours after the article went up. They never even consulted the curators. Protests emerged all around the country. It was really beautiful. And I thought, maybe I'll go down there. I'll join the protests and maybe try to write about it. I was doing a lot of journalism. And then I had this moment where I was like, wait, why am I going to DC to protest this one piece being removed from a show that I'm never going to see because no museum here in New York is going to take it? And I can't go see a queer exhibit like that here. A few years before, this woman named Wema Perry had put out a report that showed that the major museums in New York City barely ever talked about LGBT topics in the last decade, right? And I was so annoyed. And I had this moment where I was like, well, what if instead of going down to protest that exhibit in that museum, which is necessary, and I'm so glad so many people were doing it. And I was like, what if I didn't do that? And instead, I held a museum of my own. And I lived in a big collective house in Bushwick. And there was a group called Quorum who were organizing all of these events, a week of sort of queer teach-ins where queer people taught other queer people inside queer homes and private spaces. And they were looking for something for their opening night. We had this big loft space and we'd done events in the queer community before. And so they asked us and we decided, my roommates generously, they were like, we're old and we don't want to do this. And I was like, I will clean up if you'll let me throw a museum instead of a party. And everybody said yes, even though I could not explain exactly what it was. But I was like, I just feel this thing that and access to creating space and making our own history and sharing what we each already know. And luckily, a person named Buzz Slutsky reached out and wanted to help curate. They were a curator and a gallerist and artist. I had never curated anything, did not know how to hang a painting, basically. They came along and we gathered up, put out a call for proposals and exhibits, and 30 people showed up with exhibits that they made. 300 people showed up over the course of the night at my apartment. It was just this huge party because people were hungry for this history, I realized. And then at midnight, a bunch of cops showed up to shut us down. And so the party ended before we got to show all the exhibits. And people asked, when's the next one? And I had no plans for a next one. It was not an organization, it was a party. And instead, people just wanted to do it. And this other person reached out, Graham Bridgman. He was a theology student and he raised money for queer causes. He was a development worker. And he said, I'll raise the money if you teach me the queer history. And Buzz was in to do it again. The Leslie Lohman Museum in New York City lent us space when they were normally closed back then in August, when they were more of a gallery. And suddenly we were putting on shows around the country. It really spiraled from there.
I love that.
Yeah, I think one of the things we all kind of witnessed recently was the Trump administration doing things like taking down markers for kind of historical landmarks that were marking largely Black, some indigenous historical sites, and LGBTQ ones, which the federal government had only recently started to really engage in any real way. And so we saw in New York them try to do so at Stonewall or in front of the historical landmark that marks that sort of square in between where Stonewall Bar is. So my question to you is, why do you think it's important to kind of preserve queer history now, especially when so much of it has been erased? And also as a historian and looking at the ways that queer people preserved history, even when there were no official channels that were willing to do so anyway, what lessons can we learn from the past under different sort of eras of repression and oppression in terms of preserving our actual history?
Yeah. Ooh, two great questions. Okay, I'll start with the first one. Why is it important? I think it is important for so many reasons. But the ones that I will highlight here is that as a young person, when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s, I had no sense of queer history. I had no sense of queer possibility because of that. It felt like if there were no people before me and no culture before me and no anything, then what could I be? I had no role models in that sense, no understanding of anything other than homosexuals dying of AIDS on the television screen, right? When you don't have a past, it's hard to imagine that you have a future. And it's hard to let go of or resist lies people are going to tell you about yourself, about your community, about what it means, the kind of different that you are, whatever that difference is, right? So I think for all of those reasons, like community reasons, we need to recognize our past and to grapple with it, the good and the bad. It helps us to understand where we're at now. And once we understand that, it can help us understand where we're going, right? I see some of these people mostly online. I've never met a real person like this, but the ones who are like, oh, the transgender movement hijacked the gay movement and they're totally separate things. And I'm like, you just literally have no history. And that's part of your ignorance is so vast, you mistake it for knowledge. And that is it's many things. I think in some cases it's willful misreading of history. It's not just ignorance, it's evil, and I think it's a manipulate. But I think in some cases it really truly is that a lack of knowledge has kept these people so blessedly ignorant that they can be manipulated and made angry and distracted in ways that are deadly and pernicious for them and for the rest of the community. So I think those are the reasons why we need this history. Also, without it, the rest of the world doesn't make sense, right? You try to remove one piece of history and you will never understand the other pressures that are functioning around it, because we need to understand the full picture to understand how we as historical actors move in the world. The other question you asked, I've forgotten already, though.
It's okay. Yeah. So my follow up was, what can we learn about the preservation of queer history from history itself when we've lived through other eras of various kinds of repression, or where the idea of even an institution like the Smithsonian collecting or doing a queer specific exhibit wasn't even possible? So what can we learn from, folks who were able to preserve history even under more repressive times?
I mean, I think the message really is we have to do it for ourselves. And I've heard that not just historically, but today, people like Invisible Histories who collect the queer histories of the South saw them in a meeting right before Trump got elected the second time. And they were like, it used to be that we said the gold standard, we help people get collections into universities. And now we are seeing universities get rid of those collections or strip all the queer metadata out so you can never find them again. And they realized that what they needed to be doing was creating their own institution to protect their own documents, their own things in the South, so that they don't have to send them to the institutions that already do exist, like the Lesbian Herstory Archives here in New York, which is amazing, but should not be the only repository, right? We need to fund and invest in these institutions that are in some ways separatist. In the 90s and the early 2000s, I think separatism had a really bad rap. It was seen as backward, as ignorant, as unwilling to participate in the world. You got jokes made about women's separatist movements and lesbian separatists and the radical fairies, and places like the LGBT Center in Manhattan were no longer centers of culture in the way that they used to be. But those organizations are there exactly for times like this. And I think we are seeing, in the same way that people have come to realize that losing gay bars has real consequences, even if you feel like you can go out to a bar that's not gay and bring your partner, right? That having our own space means something. Losing the gay bookstores means something. Not having the queer papers anymore, it means something. And I think that that is a lesson that we really need to pick up on. We need to be saving our own materials, saving them for each other, learning how to archive our things, supporting archivists and those people who are getting information out there the way you guys are doing. And also, I just want to make the case that it's incredibly beautiful and wonderful to encounter these objects of the past. So a few months ago, I had the opportunity. I saw this thing, a scrapbook posted on eBay that I was like, I think this is gay. I just have a nose for it at this point. It was a guy born in the 1930s in Brooklyn, a black gay guy. And I couldn't afford what this guy wanted who was selling it on eBay. And I reached out to him. It didn't sell, wanted hundreds upon hundreds of dollars. And I said to him, look, I'm a historian. I see that you are a person who sells ephemera, and that this is just a random thing to you. But this is a pretty critical thing that we don't have much of. This is a scrapbook of a black gay man in Brooklyn in the military in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, right? In the 60s. This is special. And can I get it from you? And I said, I can't afford what you want, and I'll give you this much. And he was really cool about it. And he said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And so now I have this document, which I'm going to show you in a second, and I have to get it safekeeping somewhere. But it is this beautiful, just unreal collection of photographs of this man in the military and his life. And my favorite article or piece of ephemera in this whole thing is at the very start. It's a photo of him and his roommate, who are the only two men to graduate out of a class of 200 at the Apex School of Hair Design in Harlem. It's
Cool.
amazing. It's
Yeah.
so cool, and I love it. And I think when we don't have access to our history, when we don't get to see things like this, it's not good for us. It doesn't spark joy. You don't get a sense of historical possibility or who you could be. So that's why I think it's really important.
It is very important. I think history itself in itself is very important, but to keep our history alive and keep it growing and building and nurturing the next generations to come. Because like you said, these are the things that they need to know. They need to understand where they come from, who they come from, and what we do. So
Mhm.
I do want to jump on to our next question because it's something very interesting, and I'm actually excited for May 26th coming right around the corner. I'm gonna say that again, May 26th, right around the corner. You have a new book coming out entitled My Bad, A Personal History of the Queer 90s and Beyond. Yes, I see you holding it up. What
I
sparked
learned to Vanna White in the 90s.
yes, Vanna White. Right here, we're Kiki Shepherd. So I know you watched the Apollo back in the day, so I'm gonna need you to do your best Kiki Shepherd. But what inspired the book? Like, where did it come from?
Oh, a lot of things. But the biggest one actually is what we were just talking about, my work with queer history. I love history. And so much of what I do depends on people in the past writing down their stories, preserving their histories. And I realized at some point that I was not doing that part of the work, that I think I have long been uncomfortable with parts of my own history, haven't known how to talk about them, experienced a lot of queer phobic moments and people in the 90s and became, I think, eager to talk to people, outgoing in my own way, but always a bit of a loner. And I didn't really talk about the 90s. And so this was my opportunity, I realized, to reinsert myself into the historical record and reckon with exactly what we were talking about at the top of this, how queer community and life is changing and how I lived those changes right up close and how I
Mhm.
can understand where we are right now because of my experiences going all the way back in 1990, the moment that kicks off the book when I'm 12 years old in Spanish class and a bunch of kids are making gay jokes at me and my teacher doesn't understand what's happening and she thinks she'll just do a really fun lesson on slang, how to speak Spanish around the world. And she spends the next class period teaching us how to say faggot in Spanish in every country in the world.
Oh,
That's what kicked off the book.
Wow.
It's a crazy moment that's hard to imagine today. You cannot imagine that happening, but that was
oh, that would not happen.
typical.
Okay.
No, that would not fly today. Would not fly today. But those moments made me. And when I think back on how I now see all of these depictions of 90s things, and everyone looks back on this perfect time, and you see movies set in the 90s, and the gay people are happy, and they know themselves, and they know each other, and they're out to their family, and no one is mean to them except for the bully who's a bad person. Or maybe they have a change of heart by the end of the episode. And I'm like, no, that is just not it. And I felt a need to kind of correct that history, but also show the ways in which living through it was toxic. And I did stupid, awful shit and I hurt people. And I myself screwed up and was unclear. And so telling it through my body and my experiences, not through this kind of removed third person, the way all my other histories have been, felt really important.
That's great. And I will talk a little bit more about this. And we have another kind of exciting segment after we come back from the break. I'm super excited about this portion of the conversation as another gay who was sort of coming of age in the 90s. I think the 90s, I was what, like 15 to 25 between 1990 and 2000. So this is my
I was
era.
12 to 22.
I was 5 to 15 from 90 2000.
Good for you. Yes. Right, a child. Okay, we will take a quick break and we'll come back here at Power Beyond Pride.
Are you looking for a way to make your philanthropy more meaningful and more aligned with social justice? Meet New Moon Network. New Moon helps individuals, institutions, and foundations move their dollars where they matter most, into grassroots movements advancing the rights and self-determination of people in the sex trade. If you're a funder ready to move in solidarity with sex workers and survivors, this is your invitation to come learn about our movement and help fund meaningful advancement for sex workers' rights. Reach out to us today at contact@newmoonfund.org and take the next step toward funding with purpose.
Hey, this is Sean Aaron, he, him, his, and I'm here to tell you about Them Boys Podcast. I'm the host of Them Boys Podcast, and as a Black queer trans man, the podcast amplifies the voices of other trans men of color as we share our transition stories. The podcast not only amplifies the voices of trans men of color, but it raises awareness and conversations around our lived experiences. You can listen to the podcast by going to themboys.org/podcast. That's DEMBOIS.org/podcast. I hope to have you join us on the next episode.
Welcome back to Power Beyond Pride. I'm Kenyon. I'm here with my co-host Mattie, and we are having a very fun conversation with Hugh Ryan. So first, we just left you talking about your upcoming memoir, and I'm curious to know, as a gay of a certain age, that it sounds like
age.
this I'm 51. It's totally fine. I tell anybody. This book is really, I think, kind of speaking to a particular era that you and I remember, right, as folks kind of coming of age in the 90s. And so what are you hoping that older generations of queer folks or gay men specifically will feel when they read it, and also what younger folks you want to take away from it?
I hope for people our age and people who were there and who experienced it along with me, there is a sense of recognition and perhaps also a sense of bringing back up things we haven't thought about in a minute. One of the themes in my book is really about families coming back together and love and forgiveness. Cheesy as that can sound, I think it is a necessary part of healing and growing up, learning how to forgive and how to be forgiven, how to ask for forgiveness. And I think that for me, a large part of moving away from the 90s was forgetting a lot of pain in ways that I think you need to heal. That sometimes you need to put it aside. But I don't think it helps us to forget that too much, right? We need to remember what did happen, not just sort of like hazily clouded over with sort of like cotton candy floss and that Vaseline lens that RuPaul used in the first season of Drag Race. We want to look at it clearly and actually think critically about what was good and what was bad. And that is so much of what I want us to remember right now when things have changed so much. And sometimes it can be hard to remember that those things are within our living lifetime, right? I talk a lot in the book about how ideas about what it means to be trans, for instance, have vastly changed in just our living memory. When I read the first book of trans history by a trans author that I had ever encountered, Transgender Warriors by Leslie Feinberg, incredible book. The subtitle was From Joan of Arc to RuPaul. And it's not because Leslie didn't know what a trans person was, right? It's the idea has shifted and changed. And I think those of us who were there can sometimes forget that we have seen so much change already. And that should open us to the possibility of change in the future, that this is not just what it is, that we could be different people and we can define things differently moving forward because we've seen it happen already. And for those people who weren't there, especially the young folks right now who are being persecuted by the Trump administration and more broadly by the fascist, white nationalist, transphobic right wing in this country, I want to say to them, it was pretty bad. And yeah, it was hard, but we have ideas about how to get through this. And a lot of it is about coming together and working with each other and taking care of each other and hashing out strategies in the room. Everything from ACT UP to the Daughters of Bilitis, this organizing has been done before. And yes, it is a terrifying time right now. But God, the 80s for gay men were particularly terrifying. And people made it through. And it will continue to be scary and that won't stop. But that's what I hope young people can see in this. The world was different and change happened. And that means maybe we can make change again.
Awesome. So before we go to our next segment, just one quick follow-up. If you could name one specific thing right now that you think this is the thing that I want us to capture for it as a piece of history for the future to remember as it pertains to queer life or politics or art.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this flourishing of absolute trans brilliance that we are seeing right now, like trans artists, writers, filmmakers, politicians, lawyers, it to me, the unfortunate parallel that I think about is the Weimar Republic, where we do have this incredible trans flourishing happening right before World War II. And we've had that erased and taken from us. And it's taken so many decades to even recover our knowledge of it, right? And so that's what I don't want us to forget from this moment, regardless of what happens from here. There has been so much beauty created, so much art, so much life, so much culture, and that is incredible. And I like the people who are documenting it right now, the New York City Trans Oral History Project, the Digital Transgender Archives, MOTHA, the Museum of Transgender History and Art. These people are doing incredibly important work.
That's beautiful. And like you said, we must always keep this alive because no matter how far we go in the future, we got to know where we came from. We got to have some sense of belonging. So I love that. I love that. All right. Now, Hugh, this is one of my favorite parts of the show because this is where we get to be fun on purpose. Now, there's a little innuendo that we'll make in the midst of the show, but this is when we can kind of be just a little bit crash, a little bit brash, a little bit uncouth, and we can have fun. It is our speed round time, okay? The only rule during speed round is do not think. Answer with the first thing that pops in your head, even if it is...
I am so good at not thinking. A smooth brain in there most of the time.
Well, this is going to be fun. Well, Kenyon, that's the first question. We're going to go ahead and get started.
All right. So first question, a word that describes your younger self.
Mm.
Oh, kittenish.
Okay,
Meow.
cute.
Yes.
Okay, well, what's a word that describes who you are now?
Oh, puppy-like. I think
Oh,
I've really transitioned to animals.
okay.
Yes. So, favorite queer icon of all time?
Yoshi Kuramiya, civil rights activist, AIDS activist, and the person who brought the first named case to the Supreme Court to try to legalize medical marijuana.
All right, all right. And what is a book that has changed your life?
Book that has changed my life. The Trouble with Normal by Michael Warner, which I read in 1999 and just really was full of political ideas that I had not thought about or encountered anywhere else.
Okay.
Your go-to comfort show?
Survivor. I've watched every season in America. Now I've branched out to Australia and New Zealand. I will watch Survivor in any language, any place.
Okay, so I have a question because I'm not a Survivor watcher. Which country has the best Survivor?
Australia, hands down. Australia actually has all of the best reality television because there's basically two populations in Australia. You have the people who were so criminal, England kicked them out. And then you have resistance survivors of the indigenous population. And that is two groups who make for incredible reality television. Also, like, all of the men are like amoral bisexuals wearing the smallest Speedos you've ever seen in your life. It's so delightful. I cannot get enough of it. Australians, I'm sorry if any Australians are listening and you are offended. I apologize. I just really appreciate you as a people.
Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with going down under a couple times and having a good time. So,
Hmm.
yeah, back. Okay, so what word sticks to you more, love or legacy?
Love.
Okay. What does freedom feel like to you?
Oh, being outside and being able to move around and do what I want, wear what I want, and not have eyes on me. It's funny. I think freedom often to me feels somewhat similar to loneliness, if I'm going to tell the truth. That being free, I think of it in nature. I think of it in the wind. I think of it as an experience of not being seen, oddly enough. That often is what freedom feels like to me.
They say that to be one with ourselves is to be alone. So I can see how freedom and loneliness can go hand in hand. What's the song that defines your spirit?
Oh my gosh, that's a question I have never even thought about. A song? Okay. Simone's Feeling Good. I think that's maybe a little bit of an obvious answer in some senses because there is so much bombast to it. And I feel like I've seen so many strip routines to it over the last decade. And yet it's just like, I don't know. It has that bigness, that fullness, and that range in emotion that I want my spirit to have.
Okay.
What's a smell that brings back a memory instantly?
Coffee. I love the smell of coffee, and I find it to smell like waking up first thing in the morning and being just ready to leap out of bed. There's something about the smell of coffee that will always make me feel energized, even when I'm not drinking it. It just, I don't know. I don't know if that's a specific enough memory, but that's the first thing that came to mind.
Okay.
Me too. I would say I love the smell of coffee as a child. And my parents didn't drink coffee, but both my grandmothers did. And I used to love to just go smell coffee when they made it in the morning. Like, and now I drink coffee.
No,
best.
especially when they have the percolator or the French press. Oh my God, yes. I love it.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so this is another great question that we love here. What does power beyond pride mean to you?
Power beyond pride. What does that mean to me? Well, I think that when I think about beyond pride, I think about the space that is actually through pride, right? That where does pride bring us? We often get told that pride is such a bad thing. And I think that's the reason queer people picked it up. When you're told you're irrespectable, you're sinful, then you might as well embrace it. But I do think that having pride in ourselves and our community and our work, not overdue pride, not too much pride, but a recognition of your self-worth is important. And I think power is what you find on the other side of that, right? That when you respect yourself, say in a relationship, and feel like you are good enough, then you're not going to put up with bullshit. When you have pride in your work, you know what it's worth. And yeah, if you're a writer or an artist, you might accept way less than it's worth quite often. But at least on some level, you know what it is worth and you know when to bargain. And I think that we find so much power when we're able to accept and love ourselves.
Okay.
Awesome. And the last and maybe most important question of the night
Ooh.
is, where can people find your work if they're looking to follow you or have access to your books or any of your articles?
You can find me online. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky, Hugh Ryan. I'm pretty easy to find everywhere. In terms of finding my books, I love it if folks buy them from a local indie that you love, a place that you have a relationship with, particularly if it's a queer bookstore. If there isn't one in your area or you don't have a relationship with one, bookshop.org will connect you to indie books, but also buy it wherever you need to, however is best to you. The one thing I really ask people, like the thing that really matters to me, the first queer books I ever encountered were in libraries. And when I couldn't talk to anyone, when I had no access to ideas anywhere else, the library was the place where I found so much possibility. So that, more than anything else, is what I hope for my book. If you are listening to this and you feel moved, ask your library to stock it. Lots of times libraries want to hear from their patrons. They want to carry the books people want, whether it's a university library, a school library, a community library, a public library. That's where I would love to see my book more than anything else.
I love that response. When I was 18 years old and looking for books for Zora Neale Hurston for a project in my African American history class in high school, I was in the library and found Joseph Beam's In the Life
And the
and
light,
Brother to Brother. And I checked them out that day and it made me a homosexual. Okay, so thank you so
that is power. Oh, thank you both. This was so much fun. Really just delightful. Y'all are great hosts.
Thank you. No, we're super happy to have you and so glad that you do the work that you do, just reminding people that our stories matter, that our histories matter, and the way we tell it matters too. So again, we're out of time for this podcast, but hope that you will join us again and we would love to have you back at some
I would love that. Have a great evening, y'all.
Great. Well, so look here. So to all our listeners and our people who will be viewing this on YouTube, make sure you go check out My Bad, A Personal History of the Queer 90s and the Beyond. It does drop May 26th. We will tell you right now, it is going to be a great book for everything from the very first line and learning how to say faggot in Spanish. All right. So it's going to be a great book. Also, keep loving boldly, keep living beyond pride, keep listening to everyone, and know that hope is still alive and we will spread it worldwide. I am your co-host, Mattie Bynum. You can follow me on Instagram at MattieSimone737 or Facebook at Mattie Bynum.
And I'm your other co-host, Kenyon Farrow, and you can find me at everything. I'm really boring. All of my handles are just at Kenyon Farrow. So you can find me there. But remember also to subscribe and get your friends to subscribe to Power Beyond Pride on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also check out our website at powerbeyondpride.com.
And Power Beyond Pride is a project from A Great Idea, a queer-owned design and content agency. Learn more about them at agreatidea.com.
This episode is produced by Shane Lucas. Mattie Bynum, who you just heard from, is the project developer. Our editor is Jared Redding with support from Ian Wilson.
And we are both, me and Kenyon, are just a part of the podcast Awesome Host team here. There's 7 of us all together. We invite you to send in your questions yet again and comments to Power Beyond Pride because we love to stay connected to our listeners and we will answer anything we can.
Check out our new episodes each week and we look forward to queer change making with you next time. So thank you from all of us at Power Beyond Pride.
Community organizers, are you ready to unlock new levels of impact? A Great Idea is offering a fantastic collection of free downloadable tools, helpful white papers, and so much more. As a queer-owned graphic design and digital development agency empowering change since 2015, we're dedicated to providing you with the resources you need to grow, empower, and activate your communities. Discover insightful knowledge and practical tools to enhance your work. Explore A Great Idea's free resources today at agreatidea.com/insights. That's agreatidea.com/insights.
Hey, nonprofit leaders, changemakers, and community builders. If you're navigating growth, equity concerns, or just trying to make your work better, you need to know about Orange Cap Consultation, a boutique consulting firm led by me, Melody KG. Orange Cap offers community-rooted consulting to help mission-driven teams move with clarity, equity, and have a real impact. Whether it's strategic planning, meeting facilitation, leadership development, or helping you design community programs, I've got the experience and the heart to help you build what's next. Learn more at www.orangecapconsultation.com.